Yo, what's up, everybody? It's Snail Man bringing you a tips and tricks video about peeking, when you should be right peeking versus left peeking, what distance does for your engagements, and a couple of little tips and tricks you might not know about lean peeking angles and getting a little bit of a speed boost. So, hope you guys learned something, and let me know in the comments down below if I got something wrong, or if there's something else I should know, or if you learned something. Okay guys, so this first concept is actually so simple that I'm just going to use MS Paint to demonstrate what I'm talking about. Imagine we're in the sky looking top down at some people, and we have maybe a wall here like that leads to a hallway, and we've got maybe a person here who's trying to peek out around this wall. They're trying to go like this down out around the wall, but they haven't gotten there yet. And we got another dude who's far away from the corner who's holding this angle. So here's the thing. The guy peeking around the wall, closer to it, whoever's closer to this corner, it's not about who's peeking, but whoever's closer to it, if this orange dot represents the camera, right now, this guy peeking around the corner cannot see the guy holding the angle from his camera perspective because he's too close to the corner. But the guy who is in the hallway, is already able to see this guy. In fact, he can already see like half of his body before the guy's even peeked around the corner. Seriously, this exists in real life. This is not something weird. Just because you can't see the other person doesn't mean they can't see you. And most of it has to do with being too close to the wall or peeking around things and you don't realize it. In a first-person game, you can't feel your body like you can in real life, so it can be a little bit counterintuitive, but you got to know that you have a third-person model and your butt might be hanging out for everyone to see. Okay, so we talked about how geometry matters and how perspective affects what you can see and what other people can see of you. And that all has to do with the camera and where it's placed on your model. So welcome to third-person mode, Insurgency. This is what you look like to the rest of the game and what you see other people. You see their third-person models. They don't see your first-person model. So the whole thing to try to understand is, how does your third-person model interact with the world, and how does that line up with your first-person model? And they might not work exactly how you suspect. So first things first, we're going to go over some of the different sort of animations that exist. You have aim down sight, but that doesn't change your camera perspective. The thing that we're interested in seeing is what affects your camera perspective, and there are just a couple of things. If you crouch, it affects your camera. If you then aim down sight, it affects your camera. If you lean, it affects your camera a little bit more to the right, it looks like, than to the left. And then if you're standing and leaning, it also works to adjust your camera model. These things change, and aiming down sight does not appear to affect these things, although it does when you're crouched. You get a little bit of height there. So now we want to look at how does that change in your third-person model. So stand up to crouch. There's a little bit extra movement. You see your arms and head kind of bob and move a little bit, and then when you aim down sight, it changes a little bit. And I want to add in one little extra quirk. When you go from standing aim down sight to crouch aim down sight, you actually go all the way down and then bob back up. Whereas in the first-person model, that does not happen. You just go straight down. So a little bit interesting nuance there. If you want to duck behind like some cover or something, you could aim down sight and duck, and it will actually hide you for a brief second. Anyway, back to leaning, the other ones that affect things. It does appear in this that right leaning really hang way out there, and then crouch right leaning, similar story, although the legs appear to move a lot there. And then left lean, you can see the leg is pretty wide and you lean out a fair amount. And then when you crouch, not much happens really, just the torso moves out and the head a little bit. The legs stay fairly compact and you're a pretty small target. So that's pretty interesting, and I think that is what affects right and left peek and right and left crouch, lean, and various things that people tend to talk about in terms of what's good and what's bad. But to really fully understand this, we need to figure out where is the camera positioned. So if you go to first person, I'm going to try to use the gun to kind of line it up, right? So here I'm getting gun blocked, but there is about as far out as I can go without getting gun blocked. And if I go to third person, we can see my gun fairly far out from the wall. and most of my body's exposed, but that's to be expected. If we want to try to get the middle of the camera here, I'm gonna line the gun kind of right up with the middle of this door frame, and then I'm gonna go to first person, and that feels like we're a little bit on the left side. So just intuitively, I think this means that the camera is a little bit to the left, like right sort of in the middle of the head, or a little bit over in this standing third person model. And that's very interesting because when you go crouch like this, if we put the gun right in the middle, especially if you're aimed down sight, if you look at sort of where the head is, we're actually positioned out and we can see and aim, despite the fact that the third person model is really just not exposing very much of our body around the corner there. So I think it's fairly interesting, and I think it's safe to say that the camera is positioned more towards the right side of the player's head, or it is when it's positioned in the middle of the standing model, and the crouch model is actually just like way off to the left side. And I think that's really the key difference here. So what that means for the game, in my intuition, is that when you're moving to the right standing, things are fairly even. So a left peek versus a right peek standing up doesn't change too much. But then as soon as you crouch, your whole body is off to the left side of your screen, rather than being in the middle of the screen the same way it is when you're standing up. So if you're crouched and moving off to the right, you're really not exposing very much of yourself. Whereas if you're crouched and moving off to the left, you're probably already completely visible to the enemy team. And if we go to, I think I have to unaim down sight, but if we go to third person there, it's fairly safe to say that the other people down the hall can see pretty much all of your body, and you can't see anything yet. So that's what people talk about when they're talking about right peek versus left peek, and it definitely means that when you're navigating the map and you're kind of creeping around, you definitely want to be slow peeking to the right, because you're not exposing very much of yourself, and you want to be crouched. Whereas if you have to peek something to the left, you're going to have a better time doing it more quickly and standing up. And I don't think people really talk about that. I don't hear people talking about left peek standing versus right peek crouching, but I do think that makes a difference in terms of the quality of your engagements with other people. And that just leaves us with one last thing to talk about. It's the leans. So I mentioned already that the right lean seems to kind of go really far out, while the left one doesn't. Oops, the left lean doesn't really move too much. You kind of expose your legs. So if we're leaning around like this, we go to first person, this is about our left lean when we peek out, and it seems like we're exposing maybe more of our body than we really want to. It's the whole torso pretty much, and just the right arm and leg are the only things that are covered. But it really doesn't feel like we're peeking out as much. It really does feel like just your head's peeking out, but you gotta know it's your whole body, actually. And then on the right side, it's a lot different, right? So we're peeking out about the same much. We can see the whole hallway. We might not be able to shoot to the left there because we're a little bit too close to the wall, but it really is just your head and your feet. So I would say that if you're leaning, right lean is actually pretty darn good, and left lean's pretty darn bad. The one exception here is that crouch left leaning actually doesn't. It totally change. The model is just like so different for how it works. So we're crouch left leaning and we're peeking that left side of the hallway there. But look at that. We're exposing way less of our body here because of where the camera is positioned for this particular animation. So if I had to say, what the biggest takeaway from all of this is that you want to be right peeking stuff. You want to be doing it crouched. You can crouch left lean, but it's really hard to clear an angle, especially if you're moving, because look, the model just changes so differently. Look at where the head goes. The whole body is still exposed when you're moving, whereas here you're moving. You probably don't want to be doing that either, actually, right? Because your head, you're basically in the middle of your head. You're exposing your body. You want to be doing it crouch without leaning to peek the corner, and you want to be holding an angle crouch left leaning. If you want to peek an angle, you want to just do it like this, standing up. Okay, so now that we've talked about how to peek angles and how to hold angles, I want to talk about another advantage that you get with leaning. So one of the things that you get with leaning is that you can peek out pretty quickly versus moving. So if you're at a dead standstill and you want to move, it's actually kind of slow. The advantage of leaning is that you can move really fast forward and back. Especially to the right. The left, is another story, but maybe the crouch left lean. The problem with crouch left lean is that you're not actually like hiding back around cover as your butt goes from being, where it just kind of stays in the same spot, exposed. So typically I'm just going to show this when you're right leaning. If you lean around, one thing I've seen people do is they lean quickly to get info, and there's a nice little nuance. There's something interesting that happens here. If you just lean quickly, the whole animation actually plays on the third person model. So if you lean quickly, look at that. I'm just tapping it, but the whole animation is going to play anyway. And the same thing happens when you're crouched. The whole animation is going to play whether or not I actually lean out the whole way. And I have a way to fix this for you, to do the exact jiggle lean that you want to do. You want to jiggle lean like this? Here's what you do. You just do something else. If you lean out and then crouch, for example, you can cancel the rest of that animation. It gets actually a little bugged if you do it too quickly when you're crouching, but you could just also move to the other way. Like you could lean out and then move back. So this is a great way to gather info. Maybe put a pre-fire down, quickly peek out, and you just want to move back the other way. It's a great tip for getting some info and keeping yourself as safe as possible. I just recommend doing it to the right, not to the left, as the right lean is way sort of safer than the left lean. Alright guys, so now I want to show you a bug that exists in the game that's going to help you peek corners faster and win more fights due to peeker's advantage. So, I have CL show POS on 1 right now. That shows you how fast you're moving, velocity, as well as some other things, but velocity is the important one. As you can see, when we're sprinting, 280, AKM is actually pretty slow, so that's pretty slow, but moving forward is 170, strafing is 102, crouching is 108, crouch strafing 64, walking, everything slows it down, ADS 62. Everything you do slows down how fast you move. So if you're standing up and ADSing, you move slow. If you're crouching, you move even slower, about 38. And this bug is going to let you just move significantly faster when you peek around corners. Only in certain cases, though. It has to do with walls. So how you do this, you go up against a wall and you hold back. So right now my S key, I'm holding S down, back, and I move left, and you just move faster. So this is 138, 140, like 148. You can go pretty fast versus 102, which is the normal speed. As you can see, you can see it moving faster. Even crouching 89 versus 64, 65. Like this makes a big difference. All you have to do is hold back. The opportunity cost is so low. You just hold a key. You already want to be far away from a corner when you're peeking due to geometry, as we've covered. Why not just hold a key and peek it faster? Unless you want to lean, of course. Leaning is already good, as we've shown, but sometimes maybe to the left you want to quick peek fast standing up. Might as well just get a big movement bonus while you're at it, All right, quick recap, because that was a lot to process. First and foremost, you want to be far away from the corner or whatever you're peeking, because if you're further away than the other guy, you're going to see more before they see you. So you definitely want to be doing that. It's going to help you win a lot of fights. Also, if you are standing up, left versus right doesn't matter so much. It probably means that you want to be using that to your advantage going to the left, because that's kind of like the only chance you have. If you go crouched, your whole butt's off to the left side, whereas the camera's off to the right. So if you peek around to the right, as you're crouched, you're not going to expose too much. And if you go to the left, your whole butt's out there for the world to see before you can see anything. The exception is that if you are holding an angle, crouched and left leaning, it's a pretty compact player model, and the camera goes off to the side, so you're not going to expose too much if you're doing that. In general, leaning is pretty good either way. Going to the right seems to be pretty advantageous. It moves the camera a lot pretty fast, and if you put in a little counter strafe, you can cancel the second half of that animation when you lean around the corner to get info. Just put like a crouch or a counter strafe when you want to go to hide. Cancel the rest of that hiding animation. Save yourself a couple of frames. Keep alive against somebody else peeking you. I hope this all helps you win fights. Also, don't forget to use that speed boost. Maybe if you're standing and you need to peek to the left, there's no other way. You can put your back to the wall, hold S to get like a 50% speed boost around the corner and shoot that guy. Tell him that Snailman sent you. Please check me out, twitch.tv/Snailman. Shout out to my boy Jems. He helped me figure some of this stuff out. Twitch.tv/Jems_TV. I'll put his YouTube and Twitch in the description. Thanks so much. I hope to see you in the gym for pugs and DGL for League matches or on my stream. I have a lot of Insurgency content, pugs, and I shoutcast some matches. Might not be the best, but it's a fun time. So come check me out. Later.